In this video, we are going to review the FUELINK5 installation of the radios and controller. Starting with the tools for success, you will want to make sure to have a drill, tech screws, or other hardware based on the structure that you will be mounting the radio to, a Phillips screwdriver, flathead screwdriver, a laptop or a mobile device, an Ethernet cable, and a USB to Ethernet adapter if needed, and an 1/8 of an inch Allen wrench. So what hardware is used for the FuelLink 5 setup? Here you can see we have our client and our server radios. On the front, there is a power LED light and LEDs for the RX and TX, which is the transmit and receive, as well as LEDs for signal strength. Next is the FuelLink 5 controller. This has indicator LEDs for power, status, and run, a power in port for 24-volt wall pack, which is supplied, the point of sale port, and for wireless display communication, this Phoenix connection can power and signal up to 2 server radios. Below that is an Ethernet port for network or direct user interface access with a laptop. And then moving to the left side, we have our Wi-Fi enableability, 3 USB ports, which are used for interface cards to wired displays or for additional server radios. Below that is the direct wired RS-485 4-pin port for your server radio. And lastly, there's an HDMI port. So let's kick off with some installation basics for the radios. Follow these recommendations when installing the server and the client radio unit. First, configure the client radio using the FuelLink 5 controller prior to mounting or installing. Signal strength testing should be performed before permanent installation on either radio. In most cases, the server radio can be mounted inside the store near the FuelLink 5 controller and connected using the provided 25-foot cable. In cases where external mounting is required, the server radio can be hardwired directly to the terminal block on the FuelLink 5 controller. Indoor mounting locations with maximum height and closest proximity to the displays and the fewest obstructions between client and server radios are optimal to get the perfect signal strength. Antennas should be oriented vertically, and when possible, position the radio so the status and signal LEDs remain clearly visible. Indoor setup should be attempted first by connecting the server radio to the FuelLink 5 controller using the RS-485 jack and the provided 25-foot cable. Temporarily mount the server radio where it best fits. Keep in mind, do not permanently mount until the signal strength has been verified. If it is determined that the signal is not strong enough from inside the building, you may need to move the server radio or mount it externally. If the server radio install location requires more than the supplied cable length, remove the factory installed cable and then route a 2-pair 22-gauge cable from the FuelLink 5 controller location to the server radio location. Terminate the cable to the FuelLink 5 controller assigned port 1 terminal block. Then remove the 4 screws and the bottom end cap of the server radio and loosen the cable clamp. The end cap uses captive screws with sealing washers. Feed the cable through the cable clamp and terminate. Do not pull the circuit board all the way out of the enclosure as the antenna cable is attached at the other end. Pull out the circuit board just enough to access the terminal block. Then tighten the cable clamp and reinstall the bottom end cap and screws. Tighten each screw a little at a time, or the end cap may bind and cause cross-threading. Now mounting the client radios. To do this, determine a location to mount the client radio on the sign structure within 20 feet of the first display facing the server radio. This is to ensure the provided radio cable can reach the first module. Mount the radio enclosure to the sign structure using appropriate hardware through the provided bracket. A vertical orientation, so the radio LEDs are visible from the ground, is preferred, but the antenna can be articulated to accommodate other orientations. Route the cable through the back of the display cabinet, Remove the top left module and connect the 4-pin cable from the client radio to the port A signal jack on the top left module in the first display. Reinstall the top left module, ensuring no cables are pinched between the module and the face sheet. Next up is the FUELINK5 controller installation basics. Follow these general recommendations when installing the FUELINK5 controller. First, ensure the controller is within 4 feet of a power outlet. Make note that the 24-volt power supply requires extra space and may not fit in a duplex receptacles. Ensure that the controller is within reach of a point-of-sale system if using the point-of-sale interface option. Also ensure that the controller is within reach of a network port or switch if using the wired Ethernet option. Consider visibility of status and signal LEDs on the face of the controller when mounting. Consider cable routing to the server radio as well. Once getting it in a proper location, plug the power cable into a standard 120-volt AC wall outlet or power strip, making sure to use the strain relief feature on the back of the controller enclosure. Mount the control enclosure to a wall using the keyholes on the back, or place on a flat table or counter with adequate space so that cables cannot be bumped or pulled out. And there you have it. That is how you will install the components for the FUELINK5 communication setup.